Okay, today I want to go over installing WSL, Windows Subsystem Linux, on your Windows computer. So to make that, demonstrate that, I've deleted it off my computer. This is my personal home computer. I deleted it off and I'll go through the instructions to install it. Hopefully that'll show how easy it is. Hopefully it'll all work. Okay, so I also sent out a list of notes that you could copy and paste as we go along. And the first thing I put is to install Vcx Server, which is an X11 Windows server that you run on Microsoft Windows. So if you have an X11 something that you're connected to, like say through SSH or anything, you can display it on your Windows computer if you have an X server running, and that's what this is. And it's a rock solid one that tons of people use, and you can get it from SourceForge. So I've even removed that from my computer, so I'll have to get it back. So you go to SourceForge, I put the link there, and be careful when you're on SourceForge. They do have ads. Don't click an ad thinking you're clicking the thing, but this is it. It's this. This is it, the server, and you click here to download it, and it should download to my downloads. I'll save it there, and as soon as that downloads, I'll just install it. And then after, when we're all done, and if we have the WSL Linux machine running, we'll even try this out and see if it works. Almost done. Okay, show in folder. So if I click it to run the installation, it should just take a minute. I'm going to just install it with all the defaults and not customize anything. Okay, let's close that. Done with that. Now we've done that. I will, like I say, you don't have to have that to install WSL, but if you want to display graphical applications from Linux onto your screen, you will need that or something equivalent. Okay, so here are the main instructions to install it. WSL is installed from a PowerShell. And let me just explain briefly what WSL is. It's a Linux virtual machine, but unlike other virtual machines, it's supported by Microsoft and it runs like just another application, like you're running PowerPoint and Excel at the same time. You're also running this. It's really well integrated and super high performance, but it is a virtual machine. Previously, to do sort of command line type things in Windows, you had these choices of the DOS terminal, which is very old-timey and very limited. You could get Cygwin, which was a early port of Linux or Unix, I think, compiled on Windows or Microsoft's operating system, and it's pretty solid. It's just a little difficult to use, to upgrade, and to keep running. MinGW was similar to Cygwin. Some people use PowerShell is a new terminal that Microsoft has come out with since the DOS days. I guess it's better, but it's its own thing, and so you could spend a lot of time becoming an expert at that. I don't use it except to install WSL, which we'll go over shortly. The other option that I've spent a lot of time doing is virtual machines. You can get a virtual machine platform from either Oracle or VMware for free. And when you install that on your computer, you can create a blank virtual machine, and then you can install an operating system on it of whatever you want. any Linux distribution or another Windows virtual computer you can have running in a virtual machine. They're really good. They're just kind of a little cumbersome to sort of have this virtual machine and talk between it and your computer. Windows Subsystem Linux is way easier to install and way more easy to work, you know, on the same file at the same time with your Linux stuff and your other tools. It's just way more integrated. And so that's what we'll go over today. So to get started, we're going to open a PowerShell. So if you just go over and type PowerShell, you'll see it. And the command that you access WSL is just WSL. So if you say WSL -help, you could get all the commands, all the options you want. The main ones we're going to use are just list. List shows me that I have no installed distributions at this time. If I say list with the other option online, it tells me these options would be available for me to install: Ubuntu, Debian, and several others. We're going to install Debian. And to install it, we'll just say WSL -- install the Debian distribution. Just want to point out, you can easily install a distribution, try it out. Let's say you botch it up. You can just unregister it in 1 second with this command, which is great, but also kind of should be a warning. Don't put like all your important stuff there and then be crying if it got deleted or something. It's just a good idea. Treat this as a great platform, but keep your files, especially your important files, either backed up or even somewhere else. And so that makes it nice that if this got corrupted, you could just delete it, create a new one. The more you put too many things in there, then you're like, well, now I'm too into it, I can't delete it, and whatnot. Anyway, that's just some advice. We're not going to need to use that command today. But to install it, I'll just say I want this Debian distribution, so I'll say WSL -- install -d Debian. Copy. And now I'm in just a notepad here with this text. And if you'll notice, I just highlight it and I can say Control-C or right-click my mouse and copy. But anytime you go into a window like this on Microsoft Windows, a terminal, whether it be a PowerShell or a DOS terminal, or once we get our machine running, a Linux terminal, they're text-based terminals. They have their own way of copying and pasting. You can paste with just clicking the right mouse, your right mouse. So if I go over here and I copy this, then when I go over to my PowerShell, if I just right-click my mouse, it pastes it. And I put that at the top of this file because it takes some getting used to, but you'll use it all the time if you work with terminals in Windows. And the really weird one is to copy. You highlight it, but you don't hit Control-C to copy it. You hit the Enter key on your keyboard. That's like not that intuitive or not that common to do that, but I can copy. If I highlight text, I just hit Enter on my keyboard, and then if I right-click my mouse, it pastes whatever I just did. So I just wanted to point that out because we'll do a lot of copying and pasting. So back to here, I'm going to just do this one, WSL install Debian. So I got it here in my PowerShell, hit Enter, and right away it brings up a Debian terminal and says it's installing. it may require you to reboot the first time you do it. And if you do, then just you'll have to reboot your computer and go back to PowerShell and see if it's there, or go after you reboot, if this does not come up, go down here to where your apps are, and you should see a Debian, and click it like that. Okay. But it should pop you up one that it's asking you for a username. Okay, because you don't have an account. So if I do that, I'll say make up a name. And this is going to be your Linux name. It doesn't have to be the same as your Microsoft Windows name, and I would almost recommend you don't, because it's nice to know which one the computer is thinking you are. And so if they're different, you'll always know which one the computer is thinking it's talking to. So I'm going to be Greg. I'll create a password. Probably should write that down, at least for today. Okay, now theoretically I have a machine up. pwd, who am I, the normal Linux commands. If I exit that, I should be able to start a new terminal and come in as Greg. Who am I? Yeah, so I've got an account. pwd, I'm in home Greg, all that. Now, be careful as you paste these next commands that you're pasting them now in your Linux terminal, not your PowerShell. And maybe I'll just even close my PowerShell because I don't really need it anymore. But it is interesting to just say wsl -- list again, and now it should show me, hey, I do have Debian installed. Okay, but I'm going to just close the PowerShell because I don't need it now. And I'm going to now go on to step 7. In my new Debian window, I'm going to say sudo ls. And sudo just means I want to run a command as root, but I don't want to log in as root. I just want to run it run a command with root privileges. And so if I say sudo ls, or any command, it'll ask me for a password. And if I have sudo access, it'll actually run the command. Well, it didn't show anything because I don't have any files, but if I said sudo ls -a, then it would have showed me those files. And you notice the second time I run sudo, it doesn't ask for a password, which is kind of nice. It's not going to keep asking me every single command I do. So that's why I even did ls first, was just so get that out of the way, the password. But the first thing you want to do when you install a Linux distribution is update it. And apt, in Debian, apt is the package manager. In Red Hat, it's yum. And in other things, it's something else. But in Debian-based systems, it's apt. And you install things with apt-get. And so the first thing you want to do is sudo apt-get update. That'll just update all the packages that kind of came with it when it installed it, but they might be out of date with something in the repository. So if you say sudo apt-get update, it goes through, and if there were any packages that maybe needed to be updated, it'll do that. Now I'm going to go through all these packages that I've listed here and install them one by one, or in some cases a couple at a time. I could literally put all these on one line and just do one command, but I recommend not doing that, because when I install a package like this, like Vim, I want to install, it's going to say, okay, are you sure you want to install it? It'll take this many megabytes, whatever. I hit yes, and then it just prints a bunch of stuff as it does it. If that package, let's say that package had become obsolete since this list was created, maybe it doesn't exist anymore, or it's a new name, I might get an error message or a warning, and if I do too many at once, I won't see that. And they do change. I mean, these change all the time. Or let's say I'm using this list to install these packages on a Red Hat or CentOS based distribution. They might have a slightly different name, and then if I just assume they're all going to just work, I won't see those error messages. So I like to do them a couple at a time, even though it takes, just sitting here doing it. But let me install the next one. Same thing. It's just worth it. It won't take. It'll take a couple minutes, but I'll just I'll edit out some of this so that the video doesn't have to record all this. It's kind of boring, but I highly recommend just doing it. One note is that this list of packages is a list I've maintained over the years as I've worked with other people on creating virtual machines and other things, other distributions, installed them myself. This list of packages not only contains some useful things, but when you install them, any packages they depend on just automatically get installed. And so when you're done, you end up with a system that has a lot of things that are useful, and they're just already installed. So I highly recommend that you just, even if you see something on here you think, well, I would never use that, just install it. It'll maybe install some things that you will need later, and they'll just already be there. These don't take that much room, and they're worth having, and they'll also make it easier if you work with other people and then they want to share something they're working on with you and you want to run it on your computer. If you've just got the base packages, it's going to work, and it's not going to create a big roadblock that you got to now you got to install it or figure out which one you don't have. I would recommend doing that. I would also recommend, as time goes on and you find a new package you want or that you install, add it to this list. Keep this list around so next time you create a Linux machine, you just get that package. You don't have to re-find it again. Okay, so I'm going to keep going on this. Just copying and pasting and hitting yes. And I'll pause the video and start back when I get to the end of this list. Okay, getting near the end. Just a couple more notes on apt-get. As I said, there's tons and tons of options. I don't want to learn them all. I'll just, at some point a year from now, I'll just delete my whole operating system and reinstall it and get all new packages. But you can update packages. You can remove them. You can do all kind of things. But I'll show you how to search for a package, or one way. You can obviously Google it, but it is nice sometimes if you're just thinking of something and you want to search for a package and just quickly get it. It's so handy. So let me just show you that after I get this last one installed. Let's say that I was just okay, that's all the packages. Let's say I was just one day working on something and something comes up with fractals. Well, I could go to Google and I could Google it and download some software that might have a virus. But once I'm in Linux, I can go to the repositories and see, hey, maybe something exists on fractals. So I can use apt, but not apt-get, apt-cache. So sudo apt-cache search for fractal, just a topic. See what comes up. Oh, and it's like it says, hey, here's some packages that have to do with fractals. So let's say I wanted fractgen. Okay, then I could just say sudo apt get install. Whoops. Fractgen. Like that. Hit enter. Now I've installed it. Okay. It's that easy. Now, there's a couple other options. Sudo apt, I think list. Maybe it lists like every package. I mean, there's a couple useful ones that occasionally I'll use. Or I think you can list all the ones you have installed. But yeah, you don't need to become an expert on it. Just know that exists, and you can use it if you need to. Now, Python, which I do believe is super useful. I'm a huge believer in Python. It comes with a lot of incredibly useful and rock solid libraries to do lots of things. And a lot of them just come with any basic installation. There are some, though, that are specialized, that are rock solid and useful, that don't come when you just install Python. And to install a package in Python, the main way you do that is with pip. And so I'm going to just go ahead and install two super useful ones for engineering, matplotlib and scipy. And those will just have those libraries available if I ever want to use them. Plus, they'll install a couple other libraries that are dependencies. So it's just a good idea to go ahead and install those. So I'm going to do that with those two. Matplotlib and scipy. And you can see it's, by installing matplotlib, it's installing a couple sub libraries it depends on, including numpy, or numpy. And that is a huge numerical library that almost any engineering Python, any program for engineering or science would use that for matrices and all kind of numerical things. So I don't have to separately install that, because if I install matplotlib, it did it for me. I'll do this one, scipy. And so now I'm pretty much have a super complete Linux installation on my laptop that has more stuff than I'll ever need. I mean, it's just, it's great. I do need to set up maybe a few customized things, like people that use Linux usually set up some aliases, different things. And you usually put those in a startup file like .cshrc or .login or something. On Debian, the easiest startup file to put stuff in is called .bash aliases. So I'm gonna just create, like it basically when you open a terminal, it looks, do you have a .bash aliases? And if you do, it's gonna run it. So you could set up your path, you could set up some environment variables that might be useful, you could set up some aliases. So I put here a starting point for a bash, for what you could put in there. Highly recommend putting these in there. You know, change them if you want, but again, I'll go into this on maybe the next session. Why have a couple of these directories in there in our path? Well, if we all have them, we could put something in that directory that now everyone would have. So anyway, that's my recommendation. And so the easiest way to copy and paste this stuff into a file, you know, you could use VI or Vim or something else, but Nano is one of the most basic editors that's usually on a Linux system. So if I say nano dot bash underscore aliases, okay, I can just now copy this stuff. Copy, and again, this is a terminal, so I'm going to just put my mouse there and right click. It pastes it all in there. Now in Nano, they give you a little menu down here. How do I save this file? It's write out, Control O. So if I type Control O, you can see it says file name to write .bash aliases. Yes, that's correct. So I'll hit enter. It wrote it out. Now I can just exit with Control X. Okay, so if I cat.bash aliases, okay, that file's there. Now watch, if I added an alias for LL to list ls minus l. So if I type LL, it doesn't work. But now if I just close this terminal and open a new one by going over here to Debian, and I type LL, it works now. LL minus A, it shows all my files, including the new .bash alias that I made. Okay. Now, I forgot to mention one thing when we created that .bash aliases there. Make sure to replace your name with your Windows username. So let me open that file back up with Nano. Okay. So I meant for everybody to not put literally your name, put your name. So my name is Greg, but on this Windows computer, for some reason, I created it with a strange name called GUI, G-O-O-Y-W. And so, just for example, if I open a DOS window, a CMD window, you can see I'm in users GOOYW. That's my Windows username. In this DOS terminal, if I do %username, %, that's how you do an environment variable in DOS. You know, that's my name. So I want to create. I'll explain why this is handy later, but you know, it'll be useful later. I'm not going to really go into it, but if you just set up this Unix environment variable such as this with your name there, so for me it would be GOOYW. Okay. That's what I had intended for everyone to do when they create this file. And so I've edited it, and I'm going to save it with, again, Control O. Write that out, hit it. So I hit enter, it wrote it out, and then Control X. Okay. Close this DOS window before I get confused. That's the .bash aliases. If you're a VI user like me, it's often useful to put a few things in a file called .vimrc. So I'm going to just do that because it's just sort of some configurations that make it work a little better with Linux. So nano.vimrc, I'm going to copy and paste these two lines in there. Control O, enter, Control X. Got that one. Step 9, cd to /mount/c. That's actually just my home directory. So if I was to open a terminal like this and just go to the C drive, PC, the C drive, you can see that /mnt/C is the C drive. Okay, now if I go to cd to users, gooyw, okay, I got a lot of stuff there. This is an old computer. What I want you to do is this wasn't written quite right, so sorry. cd to /mnt/c/ your name. Okay, and then make a directory dd, and then the alias that we set up should work then. So if I say cd to $dd, it says, hey, there's not a directory there. But if I do these commands here, cd to users your name, and now I say mkdirdd. Okay, now I have that directory here. Now I can access it in my Linux terminal. But long story short is, like, we set up an alias to get there because this directory will prove very a useful place to put things and then easily be able to access it with a environment variable from Linux if we put that in our .bashrc like that. So sorry I didn't explain that super clearly, but let me, now that we've set all that up, the whole idea would be, hey, I open a terminal and I can say cd to $dd, and it puts me there right away. So it's a handy place that I can put things and I can get to them, you know, without typing a long path. And even if I was on someone else's computer, if they've set that path up correctly, I can say cd to $dd, and let's say we all had a file there that we kept, it would be there. And, you know, global links are a topic of some opinions, and you don't want to have too many, but sometimes it's nice to have a few. Okay, so just to finish out step 9, you're going to cd over there, you're going to make a directory called dd, then you're going to cd to that directory. You don't need to put the $sign there. And then you're going to make a subdirectory called bin. And so there's nothing in there, obviously. But if you say echo $path, you'll see that we were smart enough to put that in our .csh or .bash aliases. So we have that file, we have that in our path. We could put scripts in there that would be super useful. And that's the whole idea of that. So that's step 9. Step 10 is a similar thing. This is creating a sort of an area that would be just a good place to have, that you could have as part of your path and everything. But this is created over in your old Windows directory. I mean, I can just browse to that with a Windows browser. See, there's a bin there because I just made it. I also want to create a directory in my Linux new file system that I'm going to also maybe in the future put stuff. Why would I need two sort of standardized directories? Well, because sometimes some types of files you don't want to have in a Windows file system. For example, if you run a program that does anything with permissions on files, and it examines those permissions or sets them or even reads them, it might crash if the file is in the Windows side because the file permissions are different. Files that have names that are case sensitive, you can get all kind of headaches if you work with those in the Windows side. So it's very nice to have a file system. Some useful programs, it makes sense to keep some types of useful programs in your Linux side and other types in your Windows side. And so to create these two sort of standard places where you might put stuff that's just standard is very useful. So to create the one on the Linux side, I'm going to create it in my root. Well, I would only be allowed to do that because I'm master of the universe on my Linux computer. And so I can go cd to /, and it's got all the usual Linux, directories /bin, lib. I'm sure there's a /lib, all those things that as a normal person you're never allowed to edit stuff like there. Well, I'm actually going to create a directory in root. I'm going to have to use sudo, but I'm going to, cd to /. So I'm over in /, and I'm going to create a directory called tbox, where in the future I can put stuff that I just want to have accessible, easy to get to, things like that. So I'm going to say cd to /. I'm going to use sudo make directory tbox. Okay, it asked me for a password. Okay, now if I list, I can see tbox exists, but root owns it because I created it with the sudo. Well, I mean, that's great, it exists, but if I ever wanted to put something there, I would have to be sudo to put it there, and I would have to be, so I want it to be there, but since this is my computer, I don't need it to be root. I just want a directory in there. And it's mine. It's not going to bother anyone else if I screw it up. So I just want to change me to be the owner. So, in Linux, who am I? I'm Greg. I'm gonna make me own it, not root. So now we're going to use, you're not going to be Greg if you're installing this, you're going to be some other Linux name you made up, but otherwise the command will be the same. I will say sudo chown, change owner, and I want it to be Greg instead of root for tbox. All right, now let's do ll. Now I own it. Now, from now on, that's a place I can write things. I could put scripts or whatever. I could put tar files or something. Do whatever I want there, and I have access to it. It's super handy. Okay. We're not going to really do anything with that today, but it'll be handy for the future. So if I just go back to my home directory, let's test out if some of this stuff works. The classic thing in a Unix system is to write a C program that says hello world. Let's do that. So I'm in my home directory. I'm going to say nano hello.c. And here's a classic hello.c type program. I'm just going to copy it, paste it in there. Control X, Control O, Control X. Now, the way you compile a program is you say GCC, the GNU compiler, the program. -lm says link in the math library. -o says output the compiled stuff to hello.exe. So if I say hello.exe, it'll run it. Hey, hello world, and I printed out pi right there. So yeah, I have a fully functioning GNU C compiler. Now let's test out a Python thing. Not only a little Python script that says hello world or something. This one actually uses a super useful graphical library called TK. I don't even know what that is. It's some kind of toolkit for graphics. But TK is actually a library of graphical elements that you can write, tickle TK programs or other things that use the TK lib. But Python's one of the things that can use the TK library. So let's edit a file called convert3.py. Paste it in there, Control O, Enter, Control X. All right. Now notice this program is not executable. It's readable and writable by me, but not executable. So if I was to try to execute it, convert 3.py, it's like it's not there's no permission. I need to change the permissions. Now if I list it, you can see it's got executable permissions. So now if I type convert 3.py, oh, it did not connect to my display because I don't have an X Windows server going. Forgot. Well, let's see. If I go down, this is the program I installed. Let's launch it. I'm just going to do all defaults just so it's running, except for disable access control. I'm not exactly even sure what that means, but it will connect up when something tries to connect to it. Next, finish. All right, so now let's give that another try. Convert 3.py. Oh, popped up a graphical window. That's super useful. I can convert feet to meters. So 5 feet is 1.52 meters. So that just shows you, hey, I've got all these tools now. I mean, a ton that we're not even going to talk about today, but they're all there. They work. And if something ever got messed up, I could just delete the whole thing and start over. And so it's a very useful platform to have. So hope you enjoyed the video, and good luck setting it up and using it. All right, bye-bye.